I'm always going to say, know thyself. Take the time to, whatever that looks like, whether it's time on your own, introspection, or what have you, but make time for yourself and always understand how you can connect with yourself. Keep the relationship, because the most important relationship in life is the relationship with ourselves. And it's really important to nurture that. And it's going to be different for everybody, but take the time to nurture it and understand, because at the end of the day, we are the only ones who are with us from beginning to end. It's us. So that will help anyone make the right decisions when you can really connect back with yourself.
Welcome to Defy Limits, the podcast by Alanna Levenson. Today, we're sitting down with another extraordinary guest. Every episode, we dive into raw, unfiltered conversations with risk takers who broke the rules and pushed far beyond what they thought was possible.
Hello, everyone, and hello to my guest, Chrissy Bettencourt. Chrissy is, when she journeyed from the executive boardroom to chocolate workshops, I love that, Chrissy embraces life's diverse flavors. This Renaissance woman has consistently chosen the road less traveled, transforming from corporate strategist to artisan, educator to writer, and her story proves that bold decisions and authentic choices create the most extraordinary journeys. So thank you, Chrissy, for being here.
Thank you for having me. Not everybody has a window into everything that I'm going through in my life in its entirety. So I look at it at like this, that when people tell me that, or they're projecting that type of thing, they're only seeing one part of me or a couple of parts of me if they're people who are close, but really they've only got a small window into who I am and what my life is. So the best person to make the ultimate final decision is always going to be me, because I'm the one that has the full perspective on who I am and what I want to achieve and what kind of life I want to create.
Your journey has been about defying external expectations and rediscovering your inner self. And so with that, dramatic career pivots and some major life changes that you've gone through. So what overall empowers you to continually reinvent yourself? And sometimes that has meant leaving everything behind.
There's a few things, but the main thing for me is making sure that I'm true to myself and who I am. I'm exploring. There's a lot of exploring in terms of, what is it that I want to create, and in order to do that, it's requiring I want to say study, but studying different things that maybe pique my interest now, and sort of diving into that to see, okay, what does this feel like for me, and then reconnection too, as you talked about, because I'm now back in North America, so I'm not in South America anymore, and that's been an interesting transition. So I'm back in my hometown, so this is where I was born, and I left at 18, and then I came back in my late 40s.
Coming full circle, yeah.
So it's this process too of reconnecting in many ways with my family, and I'm not who I was before. And, I come back here and, people tend to think of you as they remember you back when. And so there's this process that we have to go through of reintroducing ourselves in many ways to the people that we are close to.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting phase as well. And I have a 93-year-old father who I'm just having a hoot with, because he's, I get the everything's possible from him. He's got a very, very positive attitude from that perspective. And he's, in this phase where I'm now able to have conversations with him that I never probably would have been able to have before. So I've really reconnected with him in some beautiful ways too, which I'm very happy about. So I'm building these connections back up again, which is, has been important for me.
I completely resonate with that, and probably always have, not realizing for myself that I too have let that let that be sort of my own inner guidance. And it's taken a different form and shape throughout my life as well. And I love the journey that you've been on. And like you, there's been times where other people projected their fears, their doubts onto me. And you heard things like, you can't do that, you won't survive. So, I know within myself, but how do you stay grounded, in your truth when others are projecting those things onto you?
I'm at a point in my life where I have all of this experience behind me, life, professional, everything. I'm at this point where I realized I'm done with that no, it's not even a chapter. I'm done with that book. So I'm now writing a new book on what my life is going to be. And it's this blank slate. And so it's exciting for me because there's all of talking about possibility. All I see in front of me is this, expanse of possibility. And what is it that I want to create? What kind of person do I want to become now? Who do I want to evolve into? What do I want to create in the world, and how do I want that to impact? And so it's just been I'm in this exploratory phase right now and it was really hard for me. There's a phrase called the fertile void, and I believe that's from Gestalt therapy, where you're in this space of just blackness and you can't see, what's coming in front of you, but it's also a very creative space, right? And so that's where I'm at in terms of I'm exploring, okay, who am I right now? Who have I become? Who do I want to become? What do I want to bring forward with me? What do I want to leave behind in terms of myself and my life, right? And exploring. And it's interesting to me because I sometimes, I sit here and I think, well, I used to like this, but I'm not really into this anymore. And, I get people coming to me saying, oh, why don't you do this and this? I'm like, I'm done. I did it. I'm done. I'm not interested in doing it again. And I want to do something new. So I'm exploring what it is that I actually am interested in now, and trying to put aside what are those things that, that I had been interested in and enjoyed doing in my life, and leaving those behind because I know that I don't want to do them anymore.
That mindset of anything is possible, where that really came about and sunk in for me was early in my coaching career. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So when I got certified, I took a program, and then that program actually asked me to come back and be an associate trainer for them. So I did. And the gentleman who was my trainer and I co-facilitated with him, he referred me to his mom, and he said, would you work with my mom? She's in her 80s and she's going through a lot right now, and she doesn't want therapy, and I think you can really help her. And I was like, oh my God, I'd be honored. And I always say I've coached people as old as 16 and as young as 80. And, here she is, 80 years old. She lost friends, right? Being at that stage of life. She was on her second marriage, and that she had lost her first husband. And then this one had cancer and, was in the process of transitioning. And she also had a hard upbringing, without divulging details. And what was so beautiful was she sent me a card, and she was thanking me after coaching her for a couple of months, and said, I get it now. And she said, my new mantra is anything is possible. For me to experience that early in my coaching career, I might as well say in my 30s, right? I'm in my 50s now. It's like, what a great example to talk about reframing. And that's, I think really that's my forte, is I help people reframe. And maybe that's where it all started. And she helped me see that,
That's such a great example. And you see it, often where, as you said, people in their 80s and 90s are always, changing, and they create this whatever it is in their life that most people probably wouldn't even do early, like at a younger age. And I think it's phenomenal. And it's that mindset, the reframe and the mindset and the belief. The belief is really foundational.
Yeah. So in this type of reinvention and defiance type of life, what I love about you is you have this sort of just watch me type of attitude and energy, and that supports you in taking these leaps that are out of the norm, unconventional, breaking the patterns. Where do you think that comes from?
My first reaction is like, well, but why not? Why can't I do it? Like,
why not? I love that. Yeah.
Why is it that I cannot do this? Like, why do you, and I don't actually believe it. I've always believed, again, that I can do it. I might have to do it creatively, but there's always a way to do something if I want it enough, or if I believe in it enough. And I've always had that belief in myself, even though sometimes it's wavered, but I've always had that belief. And so for me, it's like anything is possible. We can create anything. It's just a matter of finding out how to do it. And the other part of it too is I'm a natural born explorer. I like experiences. I like exploring. And so for me, it's like, I want to be able to, have these new experiences. It's a really important part of who I am and the life that I build. So I will find a way. And that's why I always say, watch me.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. I had a little bit of an opposite experience with a relationship where we traveled really, really well together.
Yeah.
And then it was when I moved in with them, and it was the day to day where I was like, I had that. And dark night of the soul was like, oh my God. So that's really funny yeah.
But it's the same concept, right? Because they're two different worlds, right? There's sort of two different worlds in the sense that you start off in this one, and then you put yourself in the other one, and they're different, and you're realizing, oh, this is not working.
Yeah, no. Well, and so on that note, okay, so to spill the beans and ruin the end of the movie, you were the first to get divorced in your family, right? So that took some courage to stand against generational patterns and rebuild once again your life from nothing. So yeah, say a few things about that.
That was a big one, because as you said, so I was the first one in the family to get divorced ever in the history of generations of this family. And I come from a European background. So there's a very strict code. I was also raised Catholic. So we've got the religious aspect in there as well. It's like, you can't, basically the thing was this: you can't get divorced unless he's beating you, or he's you stay in the marriage, and I chose not to, because actually there was nothing of that happening. He was a very nice man, but I just chose to, I just realized this wasn't for me. I didn't get any, so in the beginning I made the decision on my own. I didn't get any support really from my family at all. My sister afterwards, after a couple of months, she came in and supported me. But even her, who had always been a big supporter of me, my whole life, had a hard time with that, because it was so ingrained into our family. And so I found myself starting my life over on my own. I just had to completely do it on my own, and they didn't understand. And it was hard for them to really open up and try to understand and try to open up their perspective. There was a lot of fear, and they shut down.
When people would say those things and I still consider them the same way that I used to, although my perception and experience about them is totally different. So, way back when, I would take it personally and feel like they were saying that I wasn't strong enough or wasn't smart enough, or I didn't have it in me, or that I wasn't capable, and I would get frustrated and take it personally. Whereas now I think to myself, being more grounded and knowing myself more in my own journey, best intentions, right? First, best intentions. Where's their advice or what they're saying coming from? Is it really about me? Is it really knowing of me, about me, thinking about my path, being able to stand in my shoes, which most often the answer is not. And I've also, again, best intentions. It depends on the friend, but sometimes the advice that our friends give us is some of the worst advice we could possibly get. So I'm curious what you would say about that.
That's true. I've had that happen many, many times. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard because these people are your friends, your close friends and or family, or, what have you. So, there's a connection there, and sometimes we need to go to somebody else and get some sort of, validation in some way, shape, or form, because if especially if it's a big decision, or life-changing decision. But as you said, it can be some of the worst advice for ourselves, because, and the reason is they're coming at it from their experiences. So, like, for example, when I moved, I upped and left North America. I decided to go to South America, and oh my goodness, like all the flack that I got for that decision, and a lot of the fear, right? There was a lot of fear being projected. And so a lot of the advice was, oh, you can't do that, or you're going to be financially destitute, or, there's all sorts of things. But those comments and the advice is based on that person's own personal experiences in their life. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that we all have our own journey. And so we attract the experiences that we need to move along our own journey. So whatever experiences they had, it's not to mitigate or negate the experiences. They had those for a reason, but that's not our journey. So understanding that, has helped me to really, again, detach and look at it from the perspective of, I appreciate it. I appreciate the perspective or the guidance, but at the end, I will always still make what I feel is the best decision for myself.
I've moved quite a bit. Often sometimes within the same county or area, and I've moved to a couple different states. And I remember when I moved from California to the state of Washington, first two things, we were like, oh, did you move here for a job? No. Did you move here for a man? No. Right. So that's mostly how people can wrap their head around it. Or there's like a financial gain. Right. So for you, it was, I loved what you said. It was more about the experience, the conversations, the bonding versus financial gain. So say more about that in terms of prioritizing that.
Oh, there was no financial gain. I mean, let's just throw that off the table. I left us, and I'm going to put in quotation marks, a perceived stable job. I don't believe that security exists. Generally speaking, it's not something it's a perception. And so I left a government job that most people would consider stable, and a regular salary every 2 weeks. I've got that cash flow coming in. I left all of that, and I went to South America. So I didn't have a plan. And the entire time I was there, even though I ended up working, it was not the same amount of money that I would have been making in North America at all. I mean, I was really just scraping by for a good part of the beginning, time that I was there. but it didn't, I always had enough. So I always had enough. And one of the things too, when I was down there, I really connected with what is it that I really need versus want. So there's that differentiation, but what do I really need? And it was less on the material side. And I really just created a life that was based on experience. And that was where the bonding and the connection with everybody came in, and the conversation and all of those things. So I ended up creating what I feel was one of the best phases, honestly, of my life. It was so rich in experience and connection, in happiness and joy, but yet from a financial perspective, it was not what I probably would have, had I stayed in North America. So it's interesting to see, right? What happens there, and when you're able to let go of some of those things that you think are important, but then you move into something else.
I love learning Spanish, and there's a distinction there of suficiente o bastante.
Yes, there is a big distinction. Yeah,
that's what it reminds me of, and I love that. And it's some of it sometimes it's cultural, right? It's a totally different experience, but there's that, and it also reminds me of a client that I had on and off for a number of years. When he first came to me, he was in the midst of a job transition, and he wanted to make more money, and he was heavily in debt. Him and his wife were renting at the time. And over the course of the year, some of the things that I helped him with were, every time he would have an opportunity to interview, he would come to me and say, help me with this interview process, and help me with the negotiation. And he would always raise his salary. And in the journey of that, he managed to pay off all of his debt. They moved from California to Texas, and they bought a house, and he got to a place where he had almost $1 million in investments and savings. And yet it still wasn't enough. He still wasn't happy or fulfilled. And I tried my darndest to coach him on that. And it's like he would start to get it, and then he would just default back right into the, those, but no, I gotta, it's not enough yet. I gotta, and it's really interesting to watch, how we all approach that. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's actually interesting, because when I came back to North America, I really struggled with that from the standpoint of I was back in a different sort of pace of life. And the cost of living here was obviously different than in South America. So I needed to earn more. So then I got into that, and in terms of, okay, I needed to make more, earn more. And I got into that cycle, and then I thought to myself, oh, well, wait a minute, I need to readjust my number now, right? And understand, like, there's that phrase, what's your number? Needed to change that number, but also remember to not get stuck in that cycle, because it's so easy to do. Because it's part of the culture, I feel here, more so than in maybe other places. That's a generalization, but yeah. But I do feel it is very much part of the North American culture.
Oh yeah,
it's this a bit of a rat race, right? And
grind.
You got to grind, you got to hustle. Just you got to do what you have to do. But the question is, and this is where I say, so financial stability is really important, I believe, to be able to not have that fear and just survival. But then once you have that and understand what's enough, then where do you set that line? And that's where we have to, I think, really understand what is it that we need? What do we need to create a happy life, a meaningful life, a fulfilled life? And we can apply that too in terms of work too. What is it that we actually need to create meaning and purpose in our work? it's a process, and there's a lot of self-reflection and introspection that's really required, and knowing thyself again. So that's an important element.
What made you realize? Was it like a significant moment? Was it an overall experience, or things that you finally realized over time about those societal, family pressures and expectations that were put on you to make you realize, like, this cookie cutter maybe isn't for me?
Yeah. So I had one of those. I've had a number of them, but my first dark night of the soul. So, not that you have just one.
Right. Okay. It's like you can't just have one ever.
But I had a dark night of the soul. So I was about, oh my goodness, I was probably about 25, 26. And, I had just gotten married. So I hadn't been married for very long. And I did did everything as was expected. I had graduated, I got my degree, I got a job. I got a stable, I'm going to put in quotation marks, stable job again. The house and everything. And then what happened is we were traveling together, and it's interesting what travel does.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the hunt, at first I realized started on the hunt, like in the honeymoon, like during the honeymoon. And then a year later we did another trip, and that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized during this period of travel that, there was a lot of things about, my life that weren't jiving. And I didn't realize it until I was actually traveling, because I had plucked myself out of my daily life. Because you get into that not grind, but the routine.
Yeah.
You get into the routine of daily life, and you sort of it's almost like you don't even think about it. You're in it, and you keep doing it, and you keep going. So when I got plucked out of that, and I put myself into this European trip, I started, really connecting with myself during that trip, and who I was. And maybe because there was more introspection, I'm not sure, but there was something about the travel that really put me into a different space, and out of my, box that I had created for myself. And I realized that these things weren't necessarily making me happy. Like it wasn't working for me. So when I came back, I still remember I was in the bathtub for like 4 hours, dark night of the soul, right? Just like freaking out, because I had created this life for myself, and I had come to the realization of this was not actually what I wanted, and I'm a very free spirit, and I like, adventure. I'm an explorer. So to have created this life where I didn't have that, I put a lot of constraints around myself, was, not a revelation for me, let's just say. So that's kind of where it started. And after that, I also come from a European background. So for me to, go off course was challenging, because I got a lot of pushback from my family.
If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, because big breakthroughs start with bold conversations. And if you're done playing it safe, tired of waiting, or trying to figure it all out alone, let's talk.
Thank you so much for having me. Lots of fun.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Chrissy.
Alanna Levenson works with leaders and entrepreneurs who are ready to break through and go all in. You can connect with Alanna on her YouTube channel or find her on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you got value from this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and drop a comment. We'd love to hear what resonated with you. Until next time, keep pushing, keep trusting yourself, and keep defying limits. See you soon.